All right, we are live. Hope everybody's having a great day today. My name is Lieutenant Bob Roberts with the Greenville Composite Squadron, and we have a guest with us today. And let me bring him up, and that is Cadet Second Lieutenant Burke Hansen. Burke, how are you doing today?
Doing great, sir.
All right, fantastic. Burke, we're going to come back to you in just a second, so hang on. All right. All right, so tonight here we have going on. So usually we start off with a little bit of housekeeping, and then we go to the news, and then we have our cadet aerospace lesson tonight. And Lieutenant Hansen is going to be doing a lesson on airports. And so here's what I would like to do. So for our housekeeping tonight, I don't have a lot. So I will say, though, that I have actually been putting out quite a bit of video content the last couple of days and weeks. So we have 4 brand new videos for the Aerospace Dimensions Module 3. There's a total of 5 videos, 5 chapters basically in that module. And the first 4 are already done. We've been working really hard on that, or I've been working really hard on that. I don't have anybody else. There's no production crew. But the last video, if you guys can do me a favor, if you can check out that last video, which is going to be chapter 4, which is going to be titled Moisture and Clouds. What you'll see is you'll have a brand new audio. So I've been working on the way things look as well as the way they sound, trying to make small improvements with every video. There's a really great saying, you have to allow yourself to be bad in order to be good. So at some point you just got to start. So you just want to try to make yourself a little better every time. And so we've made some, hopefully some pretty good improvements. And audio was something I was really working hard on. Bought a shotgun mic to put on the camera, and that still didn't sound really good to me. And so now I'm wearing a lapel mic, which I think does actually sound pretty good. So if you get a chance, go check out Moisture and Clouds and let me know what you think of that. Let's see. So that's pretty much it for the housekeeping. For the news, normally I do some news stories here. I'm going to bypass the news tonight, and I'll tell you why. Because we had an incredible amount of activity in this last week. We had some missions going on for Artemis, which is our mission to go to the moon. We had the biggest news story for space in a long time for the United States. We finally launched 2 astronauts off of U.S. soil on a U.S. rocket. So SpaceX put the Demo 2 launch, which was flying on a Falcon 9 rocket, and it went great. They got postponed a couple times due to weather, and that one there, they had to do an instantaneous launch because they had to time themselves perfectly with the orbit of the ISS. And so if they don't launch exactly when they're supposed to, then they would have to burn extra fuel that they may or may not have trying to catch up to it or fall back on it. So they only have a very short window of literally a couple of seconds that they got to launch that thing. So anyway, finally they were able to launch it and successful. And those 2 astronauts are now sitting in the ISS. I have no idea how long they're going to be there for. I don't even know if they've said. That mission went so smooth and went so good that they may actually extend that mission longer. And not just have them up there for a couple weeks, but actually keep them up there for a few months. So that's super exciting. And so because of that, I'm actually going to do a whole video on just that mission. We're going to explore the Falcon 9 rocket, how it lands itself, because that's the self-landing rocket. And I didn't want to do that just in 5 minutes tonight. So I think that would be fantastic. So when that video comes out, hopefully in about a week, I hope you get a chance to take a look at that. With that, let me bring in our guest back again. And let's see here. You are back, and I'm going to unmute you. You are unmuted. And let's see. Let me pull up this presentation. And let's see. Lieutenant Hansen, is there anything you would like to talk about before we bring you on to your presentation?
I do, sir.
Okay.
So I want to start off with thank you, cadets, for joining this meeting tonight. I'm glad you all are staying safe. Tonight, I'll be teaching about airports. So, Lieutenant Roberts, if you can pull up the PowerPoint, I'll be getting started on the introduction.
Okay, very good. One thing I do want to add is that I have an iPad next to me. So if I can, So I can actually see the chat now on a separate screen. So if you have anything you would like to say or ask a question for, feel free to put it in the chat. There is about a 5 to 10 second delay from the time you will say something to the time I will see it and be able to respond in chat. But if you see me looking away from the camera here for most of the night, I didn't fall asleep on Lieutenant Hansen. I'm probably just typing to people in the chat. So, all right, let's see. I think your PowerPoint presentation is up. So I am going to mute myself, and it is all you.
All right. Thank you, Lieutenant Roberts. So tonight, tonight's lesson is about airports. It is there's a chapter about it in the Aerospace Module 2 and the Aerospace Education Module program, and I'll be teaching some of the different points and materials in the book that are listed. So hopefully this will help you take any aerospace test that will help you gain knowledge of that. So Lieutenant Roberts, if you can move to the first slide.
Sure. One thing also I want to add there is when you get done watching this video, if you would like more of a play-by-play, if you're studying for that aerospace test, if you go on our channel, I actually did a video for that chapter and that module. So you'll be able to see kind of this presentation, but in a longer form. And it'll have the vocabulary and the learning objectives and all that stuff on there too. So, all right, I'm going to mute myself again, and here you go.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, the introduction. Airports are complexes of runways and buildings for the takeoff, landing, and maintenance of civil aircraft with facilities for passengers. So I post down a few images of different international airports. You see one on the left, that's the taxiway of where the airports are docked. That way passengers can get in. And the picture on the right are like from a helicopter view of two different big runways for like airliners or Airbuses to take off from. So airports are like they're like bus stops, but for in the air. They're for transportation from getting from one place to another through the air. So airports, there are like civil airports. There are at Air Force Base. There are runways that that military aircraft use, such as fighter jets or cargo planes, and they also also the airports will they grow over time, and airports they pretty much help a lot of things. So that's all for the introduction. So move to the next slide. The flight profile. This is a checklist that pilots would need to follow before takeoff. Pilots first take the pre-flight inspections and then start moving on the taxiway. The control tower gives directions to all aircrafts in the area for takeoff and landing. All pilots must follow the procedure directed by the tower. So on the diagram below, the picture that I've posted on, at the top, this is where pilots start the entry. So as they start their plane, they'll be entering the taxiway, and like from the blacktop where the airplane's parked, and they will start entering the taxiway and go downwind, as you see on the left, going that way, and they'll be communicating to the tower as they're moving, so they can tell the communication tower which aircraft is communicating to you, and you wait for the tower to give you instructions before you move on to takeoff. So as you move along the taxiway, you head to the base, which is getting close to the runway. You're just like, so in the base, it's like technically you're like literally right next to the runway. You'll be taking a U-turn following after, and at the final point, you'll be on the runway, and then you wait until you are given permission to take off. And so you go upwind, as you see on the bottom, and then you go straight out from departure. So that means that you're in the air the control towers has finished communicating with you. So that's for the takeoff, and for the landing, you descend and you descend down. You as you touch down on the runway, you'll be slowing down and come to a complete stop, and the control tower will give you directions on when where to exit out, so that way you don't cause ground traffic on the runway or on the taxiway, so planes wouldn't have to get confused. So that's pretty much the idea of the flight profile. So next. Runway markings. Public airports' airway systems are controlled by the Federal Aviation Administration. At each end of a runway, there are numbers that represent shortened headings of a compass rose. The numbers on the runway go between 01 and 36. This indicates runway heading. So on the picture on the left, the number 27, that represents 270 degrees, as you see on the compass rose. It's a little small to see, but it's on around the top left. So when it's 01, that represents 10 degrees, and when it's 18, that represents 180 degrees, which indicates north. The number indicates whether if it's north, between northeast and north, south, or southeast. Those are pilots would need to remember that, so they know when they're landing. They will know when they see the number. They'll need to know which direction they are coming from, and where they know on the other side is where the other direction is. So that's that's what pilots would need to remember when they're taking off, and when they're landing, when they see these numbers on the runways. All right, next.
Actually, I got one thing there before we continue. This is the question that I get a lot as a pilot. Let's quiz you. You ready? You didn't know you were going to get quizzed. Let's see. So if it was 274 degrees, what would the runway say?
If it was 274,
yep.
It would represent 200 and.
So if it was 274 degrees, what would the runway number be if it was 274 degrees? Because we very rarely ever get exactly 270 degrees. So if it was 274 degrees, what would it be?
It will represent 200. See on the compass rose, it goes. I see it's between west and west. West northwest. It's that represents
Here, I'll give you a life.
170.4. That's what it represents.
Yeah, so I'll help you out. So if you were landing and the magnetic heading of the runway was 274 degrees, the runway would still say 27. But if the runway was 276 degrees, it would be runway 28. So it is the plus or minus 5 degrees around that compass heading. So in this case, you have a picture of runway 27. So that could be anything from 266 to 285. Or I'm sorry, 275. 266 to 275. So the plus and minus 5 degrees on each side of that number. So a little trick question. Usually we don't. Usually the cadets don't get that far into it, but it's a good thing to know. So
thank you for telling me
very
this, sir.
Very rarely do we ever get exactly 270 degrees or 180 degrees. But it's close enough. So just thought I'd get out there and trip you up a little bit. Sorry about that.
Thank you for telling me this. I've learned something tonight.
There you go. That's all we're here for. All right, next one.
All right, next slide. Airport signs. As the pilots exit on the taxiway for departure, they will see the signs along the side of the path and near the runway. Part of the language of an airport is understanding the meaning of these signs. So as you might recognize these signs on overrides. as you taxi away, you'll see all the yellow signs that are given with letters, numbers, and arrows that are telling you they each represent and indicate of um they some of the yellow signs, the black signs represent with yellow letters and numbers represent location, and the yellow signs with black lettering represents directions and of another taxiway is and directions of where the runways and the exits are. The red signs are mandatory, which represents like which are signs that prohibit a pilot to do, and they are important signs for pilots to remember on what they're doing. So on the next slide, they'll each I'll there's a list of talking about these signs. So Lieutenant Roberts, if you can um, go to the next slide. So number one, mandatory signs. These have a red background with white numbers, letters. These signs denote an entrance to a runway, critical area, or a prohibit area. That's what I've talked about before. And location signs. These are black with yellow inscription and usually a yellow border. They don't have arrows. They are used to identify a taxiway or runway location, boundary of the runway, or an instrument landing system, critical area. Number three, information signs. These are yellow signs with black lettering and symbols that give information on such things as areas that cannot be identified by the tower, noise, abatement procedures, and applicable radio frequencies. Number four, direction signs. These are yellow signs that give a pilot directions. The black inscription and arrow identifies the designation of the intersecting taxiways leading out of the intersection. Destination signs. These are yellow signs with black letters and a distinctive black arrow like the direction signs. They give direction to special locations like military, international, and fixed base operator sites. Runway distance remaining signs. These are large black signs with a white number that tell pilots the distance remaining during takeoff or landing. So if you're taking a flight school or pilots are learn for pilot with other pilots that are learning in flight school, they'll be giving out all these different signs, and pilots will have to memorize what each mean and what the yellow signs mean, and some of the yellow ones mean, and the black signs mean, and the red signs mean. So, but I don't know if you see the black signs as much, but as you take off, it'll give you a distance. You'll see the distance numbers of how much runway you have left. So that way, pilots at night, when it's dark, pilots can see the numbers. Like the light will shine on the black signs with white numbers, and that will help pilots to see how much runway they have left before, so they won't have to go off the edge or miss the takeoff. So those signs are really important to have on runways. So
not going off the edge is a very important thing as a pilot. We don't like going off the edge.
That's right. All right, next. Airport lights. At most airports, there are lighting systems for nighttime operations. It is standardized so that airports use the same colors for lights along the taxiways and runways. So on the bottom right picture, this shows a plane either taking off or landing. So the green at on the left end of the runway, that's where airplanes would need to land. That's the only direction airplanes need to land at night. So because at night they can't see which way is which, so that's why they put these green lights up, so that way so the pilots can see if they're going the right way. The red lights mean that airplanes cannot land at that direction. Otherwise, if they land above the red lights, they can cause a collision if they can't see an airplane in front of them, which can be very dangerous. The white lights along the runway, they indicate for the plane to stay within that runway, so that way they can't get off or miss up. The green and yellow dots that you see that leads down with the blue lights, that's the exit of the runway, so the plane can exit the taxiway and get to where it needs to be parked. That's important so pilots can see. The bright blue ones they glow bright so pilots can see where to exit so they won't have to be lost. So the left one is kind of similar to it. The left picture on the left is similar to the right, but you might notice that there is air sock on the top left. It has Lieutenant Roberts is pointing to that if you can see it, but it has is circling around with orange lights to show where the air sock is. So if it's windy, the lights shine at the air sock so the pilots can see what wind is it, where's the wind pointing at and how strong it is. And that's pretty much it for the runway lights. So next.
One thing I want to add there real quick is that if you get your pilot's license, they have a minimum number of hours that you have to fly at night. And then you have a minimum number of takeoff and landings you have to perform within the previous 90 days in order to keep your night currency. I will tell you that it is absolutely a bare minimum. Flying at night, for me personally, is actually my favorite. I love flying at night. The air is usually calmer. You don't have as many VFR pilots out there. So so you still have to look for every other airplanes, but the other airplanes are running lights and beacons on them. So as long as visibility is good, then it's easier to see them. Air traffic is lower, in general, so it's easier to listen on air traffic control. And it's just peaceful. It's just peaceful to fly at night, my personal opinion. Now, that being said, you don't want to get in the thought that, well, I've flown in and out of an airport a bunch of times and during the daytime, and so I am perfectly good to go for flying into that airport at night. Especially if you're going to have passengers. So you don't want to let your guard down. So let's say you fly in and out of the Greenville Spartanburg Airport. Maybe you have a Cessna 182. It's parked there, and you're flying in and out of there, and you're there all the time. And you have a night flight, and you want to take some friends with you to go someplace, and you're coming back at night. You will be shocked at how different an airport will look to you at night. It will feel like a different airport, even though it's obviously the exact same airport. But those lights, it can throw you off a little bit. And your perception of where things are. You're used to seeing buildings differently. You're used to seeing shadows and tree lines differently. And so you definitely want to give yourself some practice, going into an airport that you're maybe not used to at nighttime. Before you take passengers in there, unless you're a really experienced pilot who flies a lot at night. I probably, when I was in my heyday of flying, maybe 4 or 5 years ago when I was flying all the time, I could fly at night into an airport without any problems. But I'll tell you that is a skill that you lose. So, you have to work and keep that skill of learning how to fly in and out of an airport at night. When you're landing an airplane, you will tend to be high. So when you go to land, you'll think that you're about to touch down, and you're still 10, 15, 20 feet off the ground. And then all of a sudden, you pull back to flare it. And then you kind of, instead of landing nicely, you kind of arrive onto the runway with a little bit of a, downward thrust to you. So definitely flying at night, if you are somebody who wants to do that, that is a skill. Don't think because you got your pilot's license that you're an ace and you can take off and land really, really well during the daytime. Don't take that as a given. Almost treat your night flying like you're a rookie pilot again. So that I'll just add that. I think that's really important for new pilots, and also give yourself a little bit of a break too. So if you are been flying mostly in the daytime, if you're a new student pilot, and you get to your night flying, and you're like, oh my goodness gracious, I'm horrible. I am so bad at landing. I thought I really was getting good at this. Give yourself a little bit of a break. Night flying, the way you look at it, the way you land, and the way it feels, it's just different. So give yourself a little bit of a break, but definitely take it serious. So, okay, I'll move on to the next one. Just wanted to add that piece.
Thank you, sir. Wind indicators. Each airport has a wind indicator that is surrounded by a segmented circle. Pilots rely on them because they are the best sources of wind information. There are 3 different types of indicators. They include a windsock, a wind tee, and a tetrahedron. You will see windsocks are at a lot of airports. You'll definitely see them down in the country. You will see them hanging at the side of the field, which is close to the runway. They'll be down if there is no wind coming, but they'll be flying. They'll be flowing to the wind when the wind's pushing them hard. And if you notice, there's a little it's kind of like it's a weather it almost looks similar to a weather vane, but they're like half circles with a little cup in the inside, and they also they turn to show how hard the wind is blowing. So they're kind of like weather vanes for showing of how strong the wind is. So in the middle, the second picture is a wind tee. So how wind tees work, they when there's no wind coming, they're just like they're leaning against the ground, like there's no wind at all, and they start wind tees start they start like balancing on its tee, so that way the wind is like picking it up more of how strong the wind is coming. And on the right is a wind tetrahedron. They're not some of you guys might notice them, but they're kind of hard to find if you're not paying attention. But wind tetrahedrons, the wind goes there's a hole in each tetrahedron, and the wind like goes through the hole, and it pretty much picks it up, and it's kind of similar to the wind tee, but the wind tetrahedron, it like the wind goes through the hole. There's no gap there's no exit on the other side, but there's so much wind being held in that in the tetrahedron that it's picking it up. So that also indicates of the wind information of how much there is and how strong it is. And so, do you have anything to add with that, Lieutenant Roberts?
Yeah, you don't really see the tetrahedrons anymore. We had an airport up in New York that had a tetrahedron, and we ended up having them take it down because it got so rusty that it just didn't move anymore. Let's see here. So I have a question here from the audience. So Joshua has a question here. So his question is, is there any advantage for using a wind tee instead of a tetrahedron, or vice versa? It seems like they provide the same information.
Yes.
It's a great question. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Like I said before, they work similar for different reasons. They're kind of similar, but tetrahedrons are not used as much. But wind tees, they're still useful for different airports. They're used more often than tetrahedrons.
So I'll give you my opinion on that as well. So, wind socks you see almost at all the airports. So that's really the go-to, because you can also, on smaller airplanes where you can fly a slower pattern around the airport, you can get a sense of the wind speed based on how the windsock is extending out. For instance, right there, that windsock is pretty much pegged. So you know that the wind is at least 15 miles or 15 knots an hour. So as pilots, we can tell if it's basically pointing straight down, there's no wind, and then you can kind of gauge how fast the wind is going up till 15 knots. Now, the reason there are different windsocks that will go to different speeds, but almost all the general aviation ones that you'll find will go to 15 knots. And the reason for that is anything above and beyond 15 knots starts pushing the limits of the airplanes unless the wind is going directly down the runway. And then even then, if it's that fast, the wind could be variable and it could shift on you from side to side. So you would still have to think twice if you saw a windsock straight out. Also, if you did see a windsock straight out, you might want to contact the Common Traffic Advisory frequency in the hopes that maybe somebody on the ground can tell you, yeah, no, that windsock gets pegged easy and it's really only 12 knots. Or, hey, no, we're gusting to like 20, 25 knots down here. So you probably don't want to land here. So that's an advantage with the windsock. Now the wind T, I haven't flown into a ton of airports with wind T's and tetrahedrons. So this is just going to be my opinion. And it's not really a very experienced opinion because I haven't flown into a lot of airports with these. But the tetrahedron, to me, when I have seen those, they seem easier from the air. They're not just a blob like the tetrahedron. You can, when you're going over them, it's a little bit easier, to me anyways, when I have seen them, to get the direction that the wind is blowing. And the tetrahedron, if the sun is hitting it on one side versus the other, if it's a little overcast, and I was from New York and it was always overcast. For those of you listening from Greenville, South Carolina, you are blessed with beautiful sunny weather more than you know. Up in New York, it's gray more often than not when it's not snowing. So the tetrahedron was usually either covered in snow, it was either frozen, or the sun was hitting it in a weird angle, and it was hard to see really which angle it was pointing in sometimes. As opposed to if you're in the south, you probably can see a tetrahedron pretty easily. So I guess that would be my opinion, Joshua, on maybe why one might be better than the other. But again, the airports I fly into, me personally, maybe there's some other pilots on the chat here. I'm not sure who else is out here that might have their own opinions. They might want to relay. But most of the airports you go into nowadays, they have automated weather. So ATIS. And so usually even the smaller, somewhat smaller general aviation airports, you can usually tune in a radio frequency and it'll tell you the wind and what runway, you're likely to use. If there's any maintenance happening on the runway or on the field, things of that nature. So usually before you even get to the airport nowadays, and really for the last 20, 30 years, before you even get to the runway, you pretty much already have the wind information. So you're already establishing what your direction of landing, what direction you're going to be going to enter the pattern, as Lieutenant Hansen had talked about. So I guess that would be my answer, is that a lot of this, you still have them out there, but I think they're a little less, they're more for fun nowadays than anything else. So, Joshua, I hope that answered that question. Let me know if you have anything. I do want to add also, I think we're getting a little bit closer to the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, okay, great. Thanks, Joshua. Joshua says that we did answer his questions. So that's great. Thank you, Joshua. So if anybody has any additional questions that they would like to ask, now would be a good time to ask it. And once Lieutenant Hansen is done, we will jump into it. So Lieutenant Hansen, I have stalled you long enough. I will be quiet and I will let you go to the next slide.
All right. Thank you, sir. Airport communication. The FAA has designated special communication codes between the air traffic controllers and the pilots. This is called phonetic alphabet. It is used so that all oral communication at the airport is clear. So all of you cadets pretty much know a lot about this. On Cessnas that you see in particular, you'll see letters on each Cessna that you see at like a local airport. The letters represent the phonetic alphabet: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo. So once you're in the aircraft and communicating with the air traffic control tower, you the code is listed in the cockpit so you can read off of, but you cannot say N or R or P or N or M. You cannot say any of those. You have to say what the letters mean. So which are: N is for November, E is for Echo, B is for Bravo, and Y is for Yankee. All pilots should memorize the phonetic alphabet. Is an important communication to use, so that way it doesn't confuse the control tower. So that way, so it also helps the control tower because it will help the people, the workers in the tower, help you find where you're communicating and where you need to head. So the control tower can give you directions. So these are very helpful. This is a very helpful alphabet for pilots and the control tower to use. Do you have anything to add on with that, Lieutenant Roberts?
Yeah, I just want to highlight something that you did say, not to double speak you. But when you did say about learning this, I can't highlight that enough, actually. So you have to know how to do this without even thinking about it. It needs to be part of the language that you just speak. So what I would do, and many of you that are going to watch this are CAP cadets. A good number of you are going to want to be pilots someday. I hope, if I do my job right. And so something that you can do, so if you're looking for an excuse to drive your parents insane, when you're going on a car trip and you see, now if you're older and you're driving, don't do this. I don't want you distracted. But if you're driving with your parents or a friend, you can drive them insane by every time you see a license plate in front of you or the car in front of you, either out loud. I prefer to do it out loud, frankly. I think it actually solidifies it in your brain better and gets you used to saying it, not just thinking it. But for instance, let's see here. Let's say we had, I don't know, we'll use CAP. So if we had a license plate CAP 123, then when you see that, say out loud, Charlie Alpha Charlie Alpha Papa 123. So I was looking at something else that had the letter P in it. So Charlie Alpha Papa 123, and just do that over and over again, and you'll be surprised at how fast you'll get it, and then your brain will just get it. And then when you're listening to things like VOR stations, and you're listening, the other thing I would do too is try to listen in to what is it called? Dumb. I will put it in the description down below after we post this video, after the video goes up online. They're AVWeb, AVWEB, .net, I think. But it might be .com, but I think it's .net. So if you go to there, and if I'm wrong, I'll put the actual link down below. But if you go to there, you can listen in on air traffic control. You can do that for the city you're living in. You can do that for a big, huge city like New York City or Los Angeles or Atlanta, which is a huge airport in the South. And what you can do is you can tune in one of the frequencies. You can tune in, you can click on a button, to one of the frequencies. And give yourself a little notepad and paper. And when the air traffic controllers are talking to the pilots and the pilots are talking to the air traffic controllers, they're always going to have their call sign in there. And so when they do their call sign, just don't write down, what they're saying. Just write down their call sign. So if they say Echo Romeo Tango, now they're going to say it really fast, right? So Echo Romeo Tango, right? So that's ERT. So just write down ERT, right? And then just try to do that for a little bit of time. And one that's going to start getting you used to listening to the communication, getting used to hearing air traffic control and other pilots talking on the radio. The radios are not like this. They're not like us talking right now over the internet. It's not this clear. So it's still using, most of the time, VHF communications, sometimes UHF, depending on if you're flying military, but typically VHF communications. And so you get that radio sound, right? So it's not always super clear. And so just getting that, just used to listening to that. I can tell you that a lot of student pilots, the flying part of it is actually really simple. You push the gas in, you go up, you pull the gas out, you come down. I mean, everything else is weather, it's navigation, it's talking to people on the radio, right? So if you look at the controls inside of the airplane, almost all the controls are around talking to somebody, navigating, or weather, right? Getting information on weather. So, you only have a couple of instruments that really have to do with actual making the airplane go up and down. And then obviously the yoke, But if you start getting yourself to understand the phonetic alphabet, weather, so if you get a chance, if you haven't already, go take a look at the module 3 for Aerospace Dimensions, because it's all about weather. We only have one more video left. That's going to be chapter 5. The other 4 videos are out there now. If you look at the books for aviation, a lot of them have to do with weather. And so things like weather and the phonetic alphabet, these are things that you can do now before you have started your flight training. They are things that you can do when you're not in an airplane. It's something that, so this way, when you actually get into an airplane, you'll know all this other stuff, and your brain won't have to try to absorb 20,000 things when you're so nervous about just controlling the airplane. So my recommendation is to, when you are not driving, but when you're driving with somebody else, take a look at the license plates and start repeating them back. So, all right, that was a really long answer to your really simple and quick question. Sorry. Back to you.
All right. Moving on to the next slide. Questions. Are there any more cadets who have any questions throughout any part of this presentation?
Okay.
You're free to ask.
Okay. And what we'll do, so we have about 8 people. So if we don't count me, we have 8 people out there that have been watching the presentation. So thank you for joining tonight. So if you have any questions, go ahead and paste them into the chat window. Like I said before, there is going to be about a 5 or 10 second delay between when you're going to type it and when you'll see us respond. So in addition to questions, something else I would like to ask is if you have content that you would like to see a specific video on. I'm always looking for good suggestions of what you might want to hear about. Also, do try to tell your friends and your other cadets to feel free to join us. I will say we have about, I think it was give or take 65 cadets, and there's only 7 of you out there. So there's definitely a lot more room for cadets to join the AE Lives. One other thing, and I'm going to put a special email out to this, we do have 2 special guests that are going to be coming out. Scott Manley, super excited by that. Many of you are going to go, we have no idea who that is. And a lot of you are going to go, oh my goodness, you're going to have Scott Manley on this thing. So Scott Manley is a space YouTuber who has over 1 million subscribers. I think it's like 1.2 million now. So just put that in. Just think about that. That's a lot of people, 1.2 million people. So he is, him and Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut, are probably the 2 largest space YouTubers out there. And Scott Manley, I think, has twice as many subscribers. Not that subscribers matter to everything, but he has probably twice as many subscribers as Tim Dodd. So he's very popular. He's really great content out there talking about space. And he has offered, I asked, and he has offered to come and speak to us and to do an AE Live with us. I definitely would like to see us have a good turnout for him. So, and as well as with the senior members, he has an incredible amount of knowledge. He's usually at a lot of these launches. He just, I think he knows Elon Musk. Him and Elon Musk probably know each other on a first name basis. So, and then the other gentleman named is C.W. Lewis. And C.W. Lewis is also really an incredible person. He is a retired Navy, Air Force, Navy military pilot. He flew F-18s on a carrier. When he got done with that, he went to the Air Force and he flew F-16s. So I guess being in one branch of the military for one type of jet wasn't enough. He wanted to fly something else. And he's been flying a ton. He's also an author. He writes books. I think he called Spectre, I think is the books that he writes. So he's really fantastic as well. He offered to come talk to us, so which is going to be fantastic. Now, C.W. Lewis, I may not do an A live with him. I'm going to be doing videos specifically around the F-16 airplane and the F-18 airplane, and I may have him do a recorded video that we're just going to upload, where I'm going to interview him about his time. So that may not be A live, but Scott Manley is definitely going to be A live. So I don't see any questions that came in, Lieutenant Hansen. So I think we are good. I've said pretty much everything I wanted to say. Anything you wanted to add before we wrap it up for the night?
I just want to thank all the cadets who participated for this meeting tonight. Thank you for taking your time to listen through this. I appreciate it. And I hope you guys stay safe through the rest of the summer during this pandemic. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay clean.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely. There is some of the other senior members would do a better job of explaining this, so I'm not going to even try and give you false information. But just know that at the senior level, we are forming a task group to look at how we can get you all safely back into the rooms and in the buildings across the entire nation. So those conversations have started. And again, pay attention to your cadet leadership, and then the cadet leadership pay attention to the senior members. We should hopefully be giving you more information about that hopefully soon, but we will see as this unfolds. But like you said, I think you said it perfectly, Lieutenant Hansen, just everybody stay safe out there. Do your best to, even though everybody seems to be kind of opening up slowly, this thing is still out there, so do your best to keep your hands washed. Still wash those hands. Even when we get a vaccine for this thing and it's 3 years from now, still wash your hands. Long live the fist bump. All the cadets, we're going to be saluting because there's social distancing when you salute. You're not shaking hands and touching each other. With my friends now, I've told them that I'm going to go, to an Oriental style. I don't even want to touch anybody with a fist bump. I'm just going to bow. And I'm going to bow from 6 feet away. So all right, I think that is it. So great job tonight, Lieutenant Hansen, and we're going to call it a wrap. Everybody have a great night. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next Monday. We will be back with AA Live next Monday. So the second and third Mondays of the month is when we're going to do AA Live. We're going to take a break on the fourth Mondays from now on. I'll be working on additional content that we're going to upload. So be on the lookout for that. And the first Monday is character development. So we don't want to conflict with character development on the first Monday. So we will see you back here next week for A Live, and that's it. All right, Lieutenant Hansen, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.